So a short time ago, the U.S. put sanctions on North Korea. Its Treasury Department, the U.S. Treasury Department, three high-level officials from North Korea, and this was seen, according to CNN, as driving a wedge between President Trump, who has spoken glowingly of leader Kim Jong Un and the rest of the administration, which is pursuing a maximum pressure campaign against Pyongyang, if that's how you pronounce it. So I mean, these countries and their pronunciations always go astray. But I think it's funny that when I was sitting here and I was kind of reading that story last night, I was thinking to myself, how many people are going to be made aware of the sanctions and their overall effect on those particular individuals, while also, having a changed position? Because a lot of people heralded, at least actual individuals, the media played their own little spin game, but most folks were happy about the summit. They said I'd rather have them talking to each other than the war of words, and then eventually, actually attacking each other with some weaponry. And it seemed as if we were finally going in a direction that wasn't the same as the rest of Trump's tenure, which, in relation to foreign policy, has just been continuing the same bombings that we had under Obama. So when I saw that, as someone who calls himself not being a fan of his, I said, "Oh, this is a good thing. This is a step in the right direction." Um, but increasingly, ever since then, there's been no real attempt to progress. And I don't think it's Trump's fault necessarily, as far as he himself wanting to go against the word he had prior, when this meeting took place. But it's a combination of him having what I would consider an administration where there's no guiding philosophy. So the same way that he can be bombing all of these different countries and feel no kind of consequence or problem with it, is the same reason he can then, in another country, choose to meet with the leader and have some attempt at a peaceful negotiation that's long term. You have one set of advisors, or all of his advisors, possibly, known the Republicans, and to be fair, a good chunk of Democrats, who are pushing for an escalation of conflict so they can exercise regime change the same way they did in Iran. Um, with Mohammed Mossadegh. But at the concurrent with that, you have Trump, who is not an ideologue, so he doesn't feel one way or the other. Um, and there was a portion of, I believe it was Woodward's book, where he asked, why can't we just pull out of Afghanistan? And then his advisors started losing their minds and going, "Oh, if we do that, it's dangerous because this conflict is going to escalate." It's like, yeah, that's the same scam they've been selling to us for the last 17 years. Every time there's some overseas conflict, the U.S. is supposed to be the middleman, even though all we do is go over there and bomb, or try to paint whoever's in charge as Satan himself, so that we can feel justified as we exercise American exceptionalism and thinking that we're correct every single time, or that, just by being involved, things are going to get better. So that's that. But going to the part of individuals who are kind of ratcheting this stuff up, I don't know what Mnuchin's, who is the Treasury Secretary currently, I don't know what his views on North Korea are. That's kind of the problem, that when we have these elected officials, we never really ask them about their positions unless they are, put to some extent in a spotlight where they can't reject it, or otherwise pretend to be disillusioned with the way that things are. They can't weasel their way out of it, basically. The issue that they're actually there for. So they'll ask him about the treasury and what he thinks about that, but not individual countries and money overseas and how we interact and whatnot. So bottom line is that he is confusing because we don't know all of what he thinks. But Bolton, as I warned back in March, it sucks being right. Is I mean, he went on TV and said, "I want regime change in Iran and North Korea." And I think he mentioned the Libya model for North Korea, again, before the summit happened, which is stupid because, well, you would think anyway, because if you're trying to make peace with the leader of one country, who the hell is going to want to make peace with you when you're saying, "Yeah, let's go in there and kill him and put somebody else"? Who would do that logically? So he realized that, of course, because he's Bolton and he's the warmonger. And he basically said, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to go on here and try to blow up this peace talk before it even starts. Trump said what, Dominique? If you're referring to wanting regime change, his national security advisor said that while we were trying to negotiate the summit that eventually ended up happening anyway. But, you know, he faced no ramification for being out of touch with what the commander in chief wanted. And we've actually had reports that, you know, during meetings, Bolton is like the little cheerleader for Trump and goes, "Yes, sir, that's such a good idea. That makes so much sense." So he's able to keep his position by feeding into the ego of the person atop of him. You know, when most of the times when it's actually serious, as was the North Korea situation, he's trying to destroy it. I told you it was 1 week when he took office, and then it was the Friday afterward that we started bombing Syria. So, you know, you can point to a lot of the more aggressive actions by, you know, Trump's team as originating from him. I was no fan of McMaster, but I do think that we'd have a different situation here because we're getting spoon fed two different things. Trump talks about how smart Kim Jong Un is, and then his Treasury Department puts sanctions on its top officials. And then what was that? Let me see if I found a statement that North Korea put out, which is indicating of what I'm talking about. Um, let's see here. Okay, so a statement attributed to the policy research director of Institute for American Studies at North Korea's Foreign Affairs Ministry praised the steadfast will of Trump and Kim for their efforts to pursue peace. However, the continued commission by the United States of vicious anti-DPRK hostile actions, running counter to these developments, prompts my shock and indignation, the statement reads. U.S. high-ranking politicians, including the Secretary of State, have almost every day slandered the DPRK out of sheer malice. So he's embellishing because nobody talks about North Korea every day, at least that, you know, people that don't live there. So this could potentially set back all the has made with them so far. Exactly. In this statement right here by the policy research director of Institute for American Studies at North Korea's Foreign Affairs Ministry, the guy says it correctly. He says, you know, he praises the steadfast will of Trump and Kim for pursuing peace, and then says that the United States' vicious anti-DPRK hostile actions run counter to these developments. That's absolutely correct. But again, because we have this like thing built in the U.S. where suddenly if a foreign official says that the U.S.'s policy overseas is stupid, he's going to get demonized by the American press, who are bought out by the same defense contractors that make money off of these conflicts. They don't care about American lives. That's why all of the wars that the U.S. currently is involved in are scams, that are all meant to put money in the pockets of those who already are in power, while using regular people like the soldiers who go out there and actually have to fight and die for this stuff as props, as little casualties for a better solution for them, which is more money in their weapons being used and having to make more as the conflict gets larger and more intense as a result of U.S. intervention. So it's all a pyramid scheme. And it was sad because in my previous times talking about Trump, when he during the campaign cycle was talking about how Iraq was a mistake, that was correct. But ever since entering the White House, he surrounded himself with these Bush cronies, one of which being Bolton, who to this day will not say it was a mistake. You saw Pompeo when he was asked by Rand Paul during his confirmation hearing if he believed Iraq was a mistake, and he couldn't give an answer. It's like, well, I wasn't an elected official at the time, so I can't really say that. And it wouldn't make just the most empty rebuttal. They can't give anything straight. Jesus. You have anything else to say, Dominique? Or Dominic, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly? It wouldn't be the first name I've pronounced incorrectly in the last 48 hours. When I did that history of Iran, screwing up on people's names over and over again because they're stuff I'm not used to saying. Just like with North Korea, I know that they use they don't call themselves North Korea. They call themselves all those abbreviations or those large letters that were there. But I I oftentimes forget because I'm not used to referring to them. So the DPRK is actually the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. I mean, I don't know which one you want me to call you, Dali or Daly? How you pronounce that? Yeah, I don't know what the solution to that is. But again, going back to how empty a lot of these Trump supporters are, and it goes back to, well, I know I keep saying go back, go back. It has to do with the media and their coverage. So they'll call them fake news, and it is fake in terms of not discussing things that are actually important. But they themselves don't take the initiative to go and look for any of this information. You go up to most of them on Twitter right now, they don't know that this happened, that the US put sanctions on a country that it met with for peace back in June, just months later without any significant conflict. It's not like Kim Jong-un said, man, screw that meeting. We're going to fire missiles in 3 months. He didn't do that. So it's again, Trump wanting to have peace, or at least, seeming to be the person who's the least interested in the conflict. And then the idiots that he let come into his administration, Bolton and the other neocon, get to just sit up there and keep pushing for more war at a time when we're already bombing 7 countries. And does anybody remember all of them? Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Somalia, Libya, and Yemen. And none of these has Trump ended, which I have a problem with. But to his credit, none of them has he started. And he hasn't started any new ones since being in office, which I gave him credit for as well. So this isn't the I Hate Trump show, and I've actually faced some flack for that. People are at this point, when they talk about Trump derangement syndrome, it's a real thing. You could have him come out tomorrow and say, I'm in favor of single payer, which is what the Democrats are now finally pushing for. And then you would have the resistance on Twitter and all these other places going, no, we don't want that. Just because it's him. I knew that was you, O'Donoghue, with your double account. Anytime there's something Star Wars related, we know it's you. And I'm still upset about that really nasty remark you made. I can't believe you would say that to me. What a sick thing. I thought you were a gentleman, but you were actually a capitalist, because you can't be both of those at the same time. No, I know you made it. It came from your account. Did somebody take your name and your picture and your like re-upload all of your stuff overnight at the same time? That was you. That was John O'Donoghue. So let's not kid ourselves. It's just sad that we have such a major conflict brewing up, and then people, for the most part, aren't even aware of it. And then we know the reason why they don't know about it, because the media won't discuss it. And then when you come on here and try to talk about it, no one who sees it and says, wow, that's kind of screwed up. We shouldn't be doing that. We should actually try to make peace with this country that's done nothing to us. They don't go around and share it. They don't say, hey, let me, go and send you this link to this person that was talking about this. It just doesn't occur to their mind. So it's a little circumstance where, again, we know why it's the case, but people don't want us to know. I'm just curious as to how the DPRK reacted to that. Reacted to the sanctions. I just read their statement where the foreign minister was like, hey, I like that our leaders, the leader of the U.S. and leader of North Korea, tried to make peace, but this contradicts that, and it is the reverse. And I said that was correct. That's that was one of their responses. There was another one that I'd actually read last night. See if I can find it. That's the great thing about not having to use the phone for these anymore, actually being able to move my arms. Oh, there's actually another article, North Korea evading U.S. sanctions. Big surprise, I think not. So I go to the Hill for the most part to look up any of this information. And it seems like every time they have this thing where they're supposed to tag all of their articles relating to a topic, and they instead sometimes forget, so you have to just dig for it. And I don't really feel like doing that, so I'm gonna go and look up I have the quotation in the description for the other installment I had. So that will be quicker. I do apologize for the delay. A lot of people get pissed. You're not talking for the whole time. I'm so angry. But it is a problem I to an extent cannot avoid because when you do streams, a lot of stuff goes astray. I was expecting to see the article, but it didn't show up. Let's see here. It will count as okay. This is the foreign ministry. They said in the statement that if the U.S. is expecting North Korea to get rid of its nuclear weapons following the latest sanctions, this is from the Hill, quote, it will count as its greatest miscalculation and it will block the path to denuclearization of the Korean peninsula forever, a result desired by no one, except the neocons that Trump has in his administration, Bolton, Pompeo, who are seeking another war. So that statement is correct up until the desired by no one part, because they know that when the bombs start going off and people start getting blown to pieces, they can go and hide in their bunker. That's going to happen to them. Or if it doesn't even get that far and it just goes to sending soldiers over there and sending soldiers over here, they're not the ones who are going to be slaughtered on the streets. Whether as being, if you're a U.S. citizen, being in the military and then being sent over there, deployed, or if you're a North Korean citizen, being in their military. They have I think they have the fourth biggest military out of all the countries. Let me make sure. That'll be something else that the two people in here will learn along with me. I saw it one time before, but that was it. Just want to confirm. Let's see here. Jesus Christ. Problem is when you don't have another person here with you while you're looking the stuff up, a lot of times people will go, "Oh, that bores me. I don't want to look at that person talk." So they'll say, "Oh, screw this," and then jump out. Like we just had two come in here. One of them is going to go, "I'm sick of this. I'm out," and just leave right now. Yeah, right. They just did it. They have a huge military. It's one of the largest in the world. Let's leave it at that. Another one just left and then came back in, or somebody else came back in after them. Now, Dominique, when you've done enough of these, you know the characteristics of people. Like I was watching Gray Hughes, who is this guy that does these investigations. Man, get out of here, O'Donohue, with all your little fake accounts. What I thought was really funny was that he would come in there and he would have people who came in his stream. And his streams were sometimes 3 hours, 2 hours long. And the average time in that 2 or 3 hour stream, as he recounted last night, is 15 minutes. So they'll show up for get a little bit and then just jump right out. That's why when I do these, a lot of times people will say, "Oh, it's only 30 minutes. You should have stayed in there for another hour." People will come for maybe 2 or 3 of those minutes at max and then just disappear. And I get when the longer something goes on, people get pulled away to do stuff, but it's too few to just like artificially inflate the amount of time I want to speak about a certain topic. There's years and years of stuff between the U.S. and North Korea that we could go into, but I'd rather do that in something that is not of this format, because I'm trying to warn of an incoming escalation of tensions, which has already to an extent happened, but it could get way worse, and people just don't know about it. They have no clue. So those sanctions will continue to be ignored by most people, unfortunately. Also, Dominique, and I apologize for the continuous mispronunciations. O'Donohue has this thing where he watches this group, and what he'll do is he'll take the names of the people who host it, and then make a bunch of accounts. Also, like anything Star Wars related. I wouldn't be surprised if Vader comes in here in a few minutes. And he thinks he's really clever. I don't know what that is. It's like, I really like this one person's streams. That's why I'm going to make a bunch of accounts. Oh, Dominic. Okay. All right. Oh, well, if it's any consolation, the Neek part was, it's indicative of how unique you are for being one of the few people that's in here right now. So maybe that can your name, the name I thought you had, materialized into your current position as one of the individuals in here, one of the few rather. the minority within the minority, which is kind of sad. But when I impersonate that, I'm sure they do, O'Donohue. That's you can go to jail for that, stealing people's identities. Oh yeah, I'm sure. But again, what I'm this is the thing. I don't expect people to know about a majority of what I'd consider important things going on because the media on TV doesn't talk about these important things. There was another story that I saw earlier today. It was about the 17,000 um, workers in Arkansas that have lost their Medicaid coverage, and it was that story's been. I've had two separate videos about that, but that story is a big deal because it's these people who have these new work requirements that they're in some cases they meet them but they don't report them and they'll just lose their coverage altogether. And it was huge because it was the first time since Medicaid or whichever one it is came into existence under LBJ that this started happening. So for over 50 years we didn't have this. But again, that's a big story that the media won't talk about, and that unless I discuss, most of the people that sometimes check out this channel won't know about either. So it's a sad altogether. Oh my God, O'Donohue, if you're gonna come in here with that, go talk to them. They do a stream every morning, if I remember correctly. You said you missed when I did streams. You didn't do this before. This is your way of acting out and getting revenge. I can't believe you stopped doing streams so regularly. I don't. Dominic, I have no idea. It's like he has a dual personality where he'll sometimes come in here and talk seriously, and then other times he'll just write a bunch of stuff. Like he has all these accounts that he'll log in and out of, and then swarm the stream with. So I have no clue. Maybe it's like a 50-50 thing. Well, go troll them again. I'm trying to talk about something serious. Why are you doing this to me? Out of all the streams that are currently on right now, this is the only one you can come to. Matter of fact, I might actually send you a link to somebody else's thing, and then you can go and mess with them. Like here, go and have fun. And there'll be more people, so then you won't be able to stand out as much, I guess. So that's the one thing that's lost there. No, you won't. You made a lot of promises. You promised to not insult me, and you did that 2 streams ago, and I'll never forget it. It was one of the most degrading things ever written by someone. I don't need to, O'Donohue. I just ignore people. I had this one stream where this guy came in and talking for like 30 minutes about whatever, and it was funny because the whole time I was so busy and caught up with what I was saying that I didn't even pay him any attention. But he was just going back and forth with people. I was like, "Come on, man! I'm trying to discuss something here. This isn't even related to the topic at hand." Which is always the problem when you do these, because a lot of times I'll put up a title and then something else will come up, and I won't be able to, say I spent 30 minutes talking about North Korea. No, I spent about maybe 17 before someone did something that I had to address that had nothing to do with the topic at hand, but they just chose to anyway. So it's sad, not sad, but it is. I'd much rather if people did that if it was something that wasn't serious. But a lot of people don't take this stuff seriously, which is why they don't look it up. You know which one it was with Donahue. I was talking about the all these people that sign up for projects and they disappear, and then you came in there and wrote one of the most disrespectful comments in human history. I couldn't believe it. I mean, it was shattering to my confidence. I almost had to just put my hand over my face and not even say anything for the remainder of the stream. Just play some music in the background. What a sick thing. Again, I was very offended. I said, how could this guy who's been here for so long decide to turn on me in such a way? Then he came in here a few days later today with all of his little bootleg accounts or whatever, pretending to be people and all that. No, he doesn't care, Dominic. I realized, and I often make this point when we talk about how, one person's insignificance. You'll have people who feel a sense of empowerment because they can write whatever to someone and then expect for them to just kind of put up with it or want to respond to it. In a lot of cases, I just feel so resigned to the fact that he will continue to do this. I just say whatever and just keep on, doing what I like or doing what I think is of more significance. One of which being, addressing this conflict that people still pretend. I remember last year there was a Trump supporter I used to talk with, and he said, "There's not going to be a war with North Korea." And this is before the summit meeting. This is during. Remember, him and Trump spent all of 2000, Trump's initial year in office going back and forth with their little war of words. Who remembers Rocket Man, that UN speech where he said the U.S. would have no choice but to totally destroy North Korea, and how freaked out everybody was over that. But again, these are the kind of things where reality is not subjugated to them. And it's sad because a lot of times when you look at the backers of many of these politicians, and this is, an unfortunate thing in having millions of people vote for someone to determine who gets in office, which that's a price of democracy that we're not going to be able to change anytime soon. But when I see them, I see people who bring up a border wall. I see people who bring up what they thought was, reducing spending, balancing a budget. None of it ever has to do with, climate change or his policy toward this country and that country and this country and that country. Now you have a couple of groups that will sometimes try to frame it as a big deal, just like, the U.S. is in the pocket of Israel. You can't even talk about them if you're a politician. It's government, the Israeli government under Benjamin Netanyahu, without being called anti-Semitic for just talking about what they themselves chose to bring up. And no one says what's the problem. Yeah, the Fire and Fury speech, Dominic. That's exactly what I'm talking about. It was followed by months of people going, "Oh my God, it's going to be a war," and then the Republicans kind of keeping their mouths closed for that entire time. Let's see, what is your stance on what's going on at the border with people trying to get in the a majority of illegal immigration is people coming here legally and then overstaying their visas, which is why the border wall always seemed like a big stunt thing that I never took that seriously. It's like one of those things where if that was all that was going on, I would say, oh, we need to focus on it, blah, blah, blah. But you can ban immigration tomorrow, whether it's legal or illegal, and we'll still have a mass shooting every day. We'll still have 76% of people living paycheck to paycheck. There's too many issues that are American made to where I'm supposed to believe that the weakest people who are all fleeing from their oppressive countries, in a lot of instances anyway, I have to refrain from saying all, but change that, are the problem. I can't look at that and say it with a straight face that this is what needs to be focused on. But I see why he's doing it. Just like if you remember, Dominic, the caravan, right after the people, you had liberals, including myself, who said Trump was using that to get people to vote for the Republicans in the midterms. And sure enough, right after the midterms were over, he stopped talking about it. Now, Fox and what is it, OAN, One American News, Baby Fox News, I like to call them, still mention it over and over again, to where you would think there's nothing else going on right now. But the actual person who was mainly saying this is dangerous stopped speaking about it for that reason. He knew it was a scam, and it failed to an extent because the Republicans lost the House, which was predicted by anyone that was thinking rationally about the overall trends of midterms and whatnot. This is the part where Dominique gets angry and tells me that, how dare you disagree with me? It's time to, what do you call it? Get you off of here like Alex Jones. I wouldn't be surprised. People have a strange way of showing stuff. And I really thought this was an issue that you could get bipartisan support for, because there are actual peace activists that don't care if it was a Republican, a Democrat, or a zebra that came in there and tried to have peace. But instead, what we're seeing again from what I like to call a lot of Trump supporters and their philosophy of bending over to anything he does, are people who are saying, "Yeah, good sanctions. Yeah, we need to show them who's tough." So they don't even have an ideology. They're just following along with whatever the president does. Let's see. Art O'Donoghue got tired of all the different accounts. At last, Jesus. Um. Oh, of course. I said it before. I don't have a single politician I agree with everything on. Um, and that's why I'm willing to try and work around whatever. If they can get some particular policy that I like, I have no problem giving them credit for it. But it seems as if, for the most part, you have these people who almost cast a I don't they said litmus test, but it's sort of a thing where they need this aspiration of perfection, and if you don't give them that at all times, they'll just lose their minds, which is why, for example, earlier, I think, what was it, last week, Jeff Flake gave his farewell speech in the Senate, and I saw all these Republicans on Twitter and YouTube going, "I'm glad that traitor is going." And then, you find out Flake votes with Trump over 80% of the time. But, that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about, where if it's not entirely done in the way that they wanted to, even if it's a majority of what they would like, they lose their minds. Meanwhile, Rand Paul, for example, votes with Trump the least out of any Senate Republican, but because he didn't vote against Kavanaugh after this stuff that was on TV over and over again, they don't pay any attention. For the most part, they probably don't even know. And if you did show them this, they would not want to give you credit for telling them something they were not familiar with. So that's that. To cap this off, I think we're going to have more heightened tensions. I'm not going to fully say if we're going to have a war. I don't, that still seems a little far off. But whenever you have a president that wants to do one thing and everybody else in this cabinet want to do the other, you have a problem. Thank you.